And Kelly, it's the concern of the FAA is not just that it potentially was misled during the certification process for the 737 MAX. The other concern is that documents that are just now coming from Boeing, being turned over from Boeing to investigators on Capitol Hill, they've been known about for several months, and they're just now being turned in. That's according to the FAA. Boeing just issued a statement to us regarding this document dump and or being leaked from investigators on Capitol Hill. Let me run you through everything, Kelly, in terms of what's going on with the discussion about Boeing and these documents. Yesterday, they turned over a document to the Department of Transportation. In that document, allegedly, the documents show that there are instant messages between a Boeing employee or a former Boeing employee and another Boeing employee about the 737 MAX certification process. We're still waiting to get those actual messages. That was just turned over. According to the head of the FAA, they are concerned, and he has sent a letter to Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg about the fact that this was known about for several months, and it's just now being turned over to investigators. So, as I mentioned, we are getting the statement from Boeing. In fact, I think we do have it now. I'm not sure if we have it to put up. It says, over the past several months, Boeing has been voluntarily cooperating with the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee's investigation into the 737 MAX. As part of that cooperation, today we brought to the committee's attention a document containing statements by a former Boeing employee. We will continue to cooperate with the committee as it continues its investigation, and we will continue to follow the direction of the FAA and other global regulators as we work to safely return the 737 MAX to service.
Phil, stay right there. We want to bring in David Gellis right now. He's a writer for the New York Times who joins us on the Newsline. And David, your reporting is shocking here. I just want to make sure everybody is aware of what you have to say. You said it was a Boeing pilot who lied to the FAA about 737 problems. I want to read a little bit from your piece so our viewers are aware of what you're talking about. A pilot named Mark Faulkner back in 2016 said a new automated system was making the plane difficult to control in flight simulators. In a message, he said to a colleague, quote, "Granted, I suck at flying, but even this was egregious." What more can you tell us? What have you learned at this hour?
Well, Kelly, this is explosive. I mean, I've been covering this story for months now, and this really feels like it is one of the pivotal developments. And I think we shouldn't miss the forest for the trees here. Yes, when the DOT and the FAA and the DOJ all learned about this document is important. But what's essential is that this was the chief technical pilot on the 737 MAX, who months after requesting that the FAA take mention of MCAS out of the pilot's manual, is now acknowledging to a colleague in instant messages from a hotel room, it seems, late one night, that this very system was making the plane difficult to control. And so the premise on which so many people have been operating, which is that Boeing, frankly, had no knowledge that MCAS could ever do anything like that, it starts to show real cracks in its foundation when we see text messages like this.
David, I also want people to be aware that one of the messages, this chief technical pilot for the plane says, quote, "I basically lied to the regulators." And then in parentheses, he says, "unknowingly." What do you think he means by that?
Listen, we're not inside his head yet, and we haven't heard from him exactly what he means. So I think we need to be careful not to read too much into what he's trying to communicate with that unknowingly. But like I just said, months before he sent these messages, and months before it looks like he's experiencing these problems in the simulator, he had requested that the FAA take mention of MCAS out. So we can, again, I'm hesitant to infer too much, but we know that he had made the case to the FAA that MCAS was so benign that it didn't need to be included in the pilot's manuals. Now we have him months later recognizing that, whoops, this thing can actually move the plane in unexpected and potentially uncontrollable ways.
So, Phil, I want you to respond to this because this is extremely damaging, it would seem to me.
Sure.
Coming from the chief technical pilot of the 737 MAX, is this plane ever getting back in the skies if it's found to have these fundamental flaws that were covered over at the time?
Completely separate question, Kelly. And I say it's completely separate from this standpoint. They are in the process of redoing the software for MCAS. Theoretically, when this goes through certification, you know that the FAA regulators are going to go through this certification far differently than they did back in 2016. So theoretically, they're going to make sure more than 100%, if at all possible, that this software in the MCAS system in the 737 MAX functions as it is supposed to function and that pilots are prepared for it in flight. That's different than what this document and what David was talking about, which gets right to the heart of what he was saying, that Boeing for a long time said, look, this is going to be in the background. Pilots won't even notice it. When you have the chief technical pilot saying, basically I lied to regulators unknowingly in an instant message to another employee, I mean, that gets to the heart of what people have said for some time, which is, look, you misled people about MCAS when it comes to the 737 MAX.
David, also, we have to talk about the timeline here. These messages are from 2016. Reuters, I believe, in the Journal are reporting that Boeing knew about these messages months ago. They were disclosed yesterday, this is now from your reporting, to lawmakers on Capitol Hill in advance of hearings, ironically, that the CEO will be, where he will be testifying about these crashes for the first time. So does this now contradict what we've previously been told by CEO Dennis Muilenburg?
I think the broader point is just what you say. This could not really come at a worse time for the company. Boeing has been working feverishly to try to get these planes back up in the air. It's cost them $8 billion already. It's cost airlines hundreds of millions and countless thousands of canceled flights. We've seen the ramifications on companies including Southwest and Ryanair, which are having to scale back operations as this thing drags out. And just at the moment when it looks like Boeing might be getting close to the finish line, everything we're hearing is that maybe these things return to service at the end of this year or possibly the very beginning of next year. Here we have these explosive text messages, again, coming just weeks before Dennis, for the first time, is prepared to confront lawmakers about this crisis, which I have to say, they have been asking him to come for months. He has repeatedly postponed and declined. And so the fact that these are coming out right before his testimony, I think, means that we're going to have a very interesting showdown on the Hill in a couple weeks from now.
Real quickly, David, can you confirm that Boeing did know about these messages several months ago?
My understanding is, yes, that Boeing has been aware of these messages for several months, but that's correct. Only provided them to the DOT, the Department of Transportation, late last night, is my understanding, and to lawmakers on the Hill earlier this morning. I'll hasten to add, though, that does not include when they may have provided them to the Department of Justice, which, of course, is conducting a criminal investigation. And some of my sources are telling me that the DOJ had this document well before this week.